Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Milrad. I'm the founder of Movie Karma. We're the nonprofit organization that created our podcast, Rewriting Hollywood, which focuses on diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation in the entertainment industry. We've had some incredible guests on the podcast lately. Today is another lucky one for all of you. Melanie Rose is joining us from the show How to Build a Sex Room, which I hope everyone has started to check out. It's on Netflix. It's a really fun show, but I think it also has some really important messages and some really important things to say. For those who haven't seen it, it tells kind of a story of everything from a secret rock and roll dungeon to a next level spa where designer Melanie Rose dreams of erotic renovations for couples and others in this spicy reality series. Melanie was originally born and raised in London. She spent over a decade as an actor in many West End shows. She's been on TV. She's since relocated to LA and has been a sought after interior designer. And I'm really excited to have her on today to talk about this really fun show, a really awesome show. And I think there's lots to dive into. So Melanie, thanks so much for being on the show. Excited to have you on.
Thank you very much indeed, Jared, for having me. It's Melanie Rose here. I am the host and the designer of that very saucy new show on Netflix, How to Build a Sex Room. But I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, you are. And we're excited to have you. Before we dive into the show, Melanie, I wanted to talk a little bit about your background. So it's really fascinating on its own. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey? So you started out in London. I saw. Did you know you wanted to be an actor at first? Was that your first plan?
It actually probably was, yes. I was always, as young children, I loved the idea that, I started off in ballet, which I think is very good for children in general because it's very good for their posture. So I did start, and yes, at the tender age of 13, I was thrown onto the West End stage in the musical Annie, in the original cast where I played the part of Tessie. And then I sort of never really looked back. It just went on, and it was fabulous. It was lovely.
That's really neat. And did you have an interest in design back then, interior design, or did that kind of develop later? What was that like?
I think it was, when I first came to this country, I wasn't allowed to work for 3 years. Now, having been successful and been working for so many years, and then suddenly not being able to work, it was a little bit jarring. And I thought, oh my God, well, what am I going to do? There's only so much window shopping I can do. So I thought, I'll do an interior design course. And I did one online. And it lasted about a year. And I was like, oh my God, I felt that I was a kind of a natural. I know that's a bit of a big-headed thing to say, but the questions and the answers were easy for me, and checking the answers. And I thought I have a flair for this. So I thought, why not do something different? So I went in, self-taught interior designer.
So you self-taught. Did you have mentors, Melanie? I mean, what was that like? Were folks giving you, designers who were farther along giving you advice? Did you seek out any kind of training? I mean, it must have been a little bit daunting, or was it not for you?
But it was a little daunting. I've always said, as an interior designer, you can read as much as you want on these, through these books. You can read about plumbing, you can read about electrical, you can read about, designing a mood board and stuff like that. But nothing is better than really being thrown into the job where you're thinking on your feet. You're like, oh my God, and getting down and dirty with it. And really understanding, working with plumbers, working with electricians, seeing what their craft is, and learning from them. I think that's the best way that one can learn about interior design, is get in there and get your hands dirty.
I love that, and you certainly do that in this show. In many ways, talk about, though, if you would, Melanie. Did you have family members around you who were supportive, or was this a bit of a right turn for you? Because I'm always intrigued when people, and I've made a few of these turns already in my career. I'm sure others listening can relate to this, but when people make some changes in where they're heading, did you have to find a new support system? What was that transition like for you?
The transition, without going too much of my personal life, I didn't have to worry about parents at that moment in time. So you could probably imagine what had happened. So I didn't have to worry about that. So I was very much on my own. So it was very much my own decision, with the insight that my parents would be, in my head going, okay,
Yeah.
make the right decision, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, and stuff like, things like that.
That's really terrific. Okay, great. Well, so let's dive into this latest project first before we get to some of the episodes and the themes of the show. When there's a lot to dive into here. How did this project come to you? Had you and I know you're a consulting producer, obviously host, designer on the show, but how did you first learn of the project? What was that process like?
How did I first? The project sort of like came, just like in a sense, came to me. I have a manager because I've written a series of erotica novels based around my time and fiction as being Melanie Rose. And we are still we're shopping those. We thought we'd wait until perhaps the show dropped. So I've written about 3 novels. There's going to be a series of them. But my manager was talking to a very long time friend of him, Adam Sher at ITV, and he said, "Yeah, she's written novels about her time when she was design sex rooms." And I think Adam was like, "What? Bring her in! I want to meet her." Oh my God! So I did, and I had a wonderful conversation, and Adam and I just couldn't stop chatting for about an hour and a half. And then I was telling him about agencies that, there was, at that time, there was a very big WME agency, and one of the business affairs people had delved into that alternative lifestyle, and the person they were with apparently died. And so it came up all of the news channels, and it was like, oh, naughty person behind closed doors. And I was like, come on. Unfortunately, sadly, the person died, passed away. But look, don't judge somebody. Don't judge them for what they do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message here. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of just sort of fun, titillating, things we'll cover, but that's a really important message I see as a theme in your work on the show and beyond. But so it sounds like this kind of just popped up a bit, just given some of your writings and some of your other work. But then, as you got into start developing the show, how did that work? I mean, were you thinking, okay, I want to work with certain types of clients or have some diversity in terms of who we work with? How did you think about these 8 episodes that we see in terms of structuring them?
I really, really a lot of that had to do with the production companies involved. I was very, very thankful and grateful for ITV America to hand me Scott Feely at High Noon Entertainment, because they are now the producers, and it was Netflix that actually bought the show. I think it was really more their job to nurture around it. I had some say, but I think it was very important as a collaboration that the show did have the diversity that it needed. We didn't want to have a show where it became just one type of person that wants these types of rooms, because it's not one type, it's every type, it's everybody. You can't narrow that down. And I think, Scott, Adam, and the people at Netflix did a wonderful job of, inclusivity.
Love that. And yeah, let's talk a little bit, kind of do some threshold definitions here for folks who haven't seen the show. And I know in the first episode, you talked a little about what a sex room is. So could you tell our audience a little bit about, number one, what is a sex room as you would define it? And also, how did you start? I understand you talked about this in the first episode, but like, how did you start sort of getting into designing and building sex rooms for clients?
Okay, so that's a 2-part question. Yeah. So what I'm going to answer first is, what is a sex room? A sex room is a place, is a room where you can entertain, you entertain yourselves, or you're with a partner or partners. It's a dedicated area for sex, your wants, needs, and desires. But it doesn't have to always be, have sexual intercourse to take place. People mention sex, but, and they think of intercourse straight away, but sex can also mean cuddling. You don't have to have intercourse to have sex. Does that make sense?
It does. So, broader definition. I know there's a lot of
on a much wider and broader definition. So really, it's a place where you can act out your fantasies and wants and desires. That's really what a sex room is. how did I come across and be invited into this kind of like alternative lifestyle in a design sense? I was actually approached by a client of mine that I've been working with. You know, when I work with my clients, I'm normally with them around about 3 or 4 years. So I met with this client, and just out of the blue, they just were like, I actually happened to be, take a step back. I actually happened to be in their bedroom, not doing anything I shouldn't be doing, but just actually sorting out, clearing the clutter in the closet. And we just got to chatting, and it was like, "Have you ever designed a sex room before?" And I was like, "Huh? What? No." And I sort of didn't commit to anything at that particular moment in time. But what I did do was go home and fucking well, research the hell out of it, and then I become intrigued.
And when you started researching it, because I'm really intrigued by this as well, like, so you started, so your client mentions this, you're like, what? You start researching it. What were some of the things that stood out to you about what sex rooms either historically have been, or like, what sort of, intrigued you enough to say, hey, maybe maybe I do want to help with this?
Oh, there are absolutely fucking awful designs out there. I mean, really, they were rooms that I thought, oh my God, why would anybody want to go and have sex in there? I mean, it looks dirty, it looks disgusting. Really, for me, I was like, no, I can do much better. I can make this look really stylish, really beautiful, and why the hell not? It beats design in kitchens and bathrooms. Kitchens, what needs to go in there. There needs to be a fridge. There needs to be a hob. There needs to be a microwave. Um, in a bathroom, you tub, faucet, showers, all those types of things. In a sex room, oh my God, there's so much more out there to put in. There's a wider choice of creativity.
Right. You can really, and you get creative for sure on the show, which is really fun to watch. Okay, so you started getting into this, and you started, I imagine, doing that, building sex rooms for multiple clients. Were folks requesting them, or did you start suggesting them as you started working in
Oh no,
design?
I didn't get suggestion, darling.
Okay.
All of my work is actually by word of mouth.
Okay. Okay.
And with that, because they are so very well established and very high up there in the community, I signed NDAs for all of them. It's just to protect them, because we live in a society now where people are too quick to judge. And, it's not, yeah, I wouldn't do that for my clients. I was like, no, I'll protect them. So we protect each other. So NDAs required.
Okay, that's a topic I did want to ask you about as well, Melanie. Around just there is an element of taboo, an element of he said, I think still not, maybe some shame around if someone wants to build a sex room, which I think this show sort of helps to open up. But could you talk a little about that? I mean, does that sound like something you've experienced even before you worked in the show?
Gosh, I think we all have experienced at some point. Why is there shame around sex? Why is there shame about talking about sex? I just don't get it. It's like, for Christ's sakes, it's just sex.
Yeah.
You can talk about it. I think, and for this show, what I really wanted to do was people start a conversation. You'll watch Taylor and AJ, you'll watch some of the other episodes and go, oh, is that something you might be interested in, sweetheart? Should we go and try it together? Why not? I don't understand. And I think there's a huge amount of taboo about bringing sex toys into the bedroom. I mean, you think about it, dildos, I'm sure people think it's like 21st century invention. Dildos have been around for millennia. I mean, you know, Roman times, for Christ's sakes, they found, dildos there. Might be a little bit sort of like handcrafted, as it were, not to the designs they are today, but they were still present. You had erotic coins, which the Romans used to give to the brothels, which showed the position that you wanted to attain when you got into the brothel. So I have no idea why people are like, oh, no, it's not, you shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, I was curious if you did have thoughts on why we have those hangups. I mean, it does, in your view, do you think there's something specific about America and the US, where we in particular have particular hangups because of our puritanical origins? Is there something that stands out to you there about the US, or do you think it's a broader hangup like in the Western world or something like that?
Yeah, I think, look, I think Europeans are much more open. I think the British can be a bit stuffy, but I still think they're more open than Americans. I think a lot of one's taboo and judgment comes from, God, and I'm going to get killed saying this, is really how you're brought up and also religion.
Yeah.
You look at poor Hannah and Wesley. Wesley was brought up on listening to abstinence tapes, where if he had sex, his cock is going to drop off. I mean, how sad is that?
It is. I mean, which is something that is so fundamental. And being in the queer community myself, I mean, I know how deeply painful actually a lot of these messages are for anyone, but particularly if you're taught that your desires are just shameful or wrong, essentially.
But why do it's the other thing is, why should the kink community and the fetish community, why should they still be operating underground, as it were? Because that's really what they are still doing. As same as being, in the queer community. You are still, you could be shamed if you come out with being queer or gay or what. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think the fundamental part of that is, and again, I'm probably going to get slammed, is, it's how you're brought up in religion.
Right. No, I mean, I absolutely think that your upbringing and the messages you get or don't get as a child, and particularly in this country where there are threads of fundamentalism on this issue and on sexual desires and needs in general, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges there. So was that something? I understand you shot the show in Denver. Was that something that you found came up quite a bit as you were working with the various clients that you're working with for the show? I mean, in terms of people's deep-seated feelings about just sex in general.
Actually, you know what? I don't think so. There was, first of all, Denver is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be staying in Cherry Creek. And you never think of Denver as a large kink or fetish community or queer and gay community at all, but it's huge. And I think that's one of the things where the producers wanted to shoot there was you don't think of it as where there's a lot of fun stuff going on underground. I mean, if you mentioned Los Angeles, it sort of like makes sense, but Denver, no. But there's a huge community, and I think it's fabulous. I think working with some of the clients, I think they were open to talking about their sex lives and how they were brought up. But I don't think there was anybody that we worked with that was necessarily felt shamed.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. And I was moved by a lot of the stories in the show. Could you talk to us a little more, Melanie, about why you found it was important as you work with these different clients in the show and beyond? Why do you feel like it is important to have this space, to have a sex room? Like what function do you think that plays?
I think it's important because, look, we use the kitchen every day. We use the fucking bathroom every day. We use the bedroom every day. We've got the dining room, whatever. And I think sometimes, especially after you've been married, if you've got children as well, sex gets pushed aside. Intimacy gets pushed aside. Probably this is a sweeping generalization, of course, but when you first get together with somebody, there is that lust and that's that beautiful honeymoon period where you're fucking like bunnies. And then after a while, it becomes a little bit, not mundane, but routine. And then you lose that kind of spark in there. So that's where, a sex room then comes in handy, or a sexual space or something, to reignite those flames, to bring that spark and that spiciness back to the relationship.
Yeah, because I know you worked with a few folks on the show who had that exact issue in terms of they had a room that was like their bedroom was just like full of like clothes or like kid, the kid was sleeping occasionally with
all that, right? What a fucking passion killer there, you know?
Yeah, and so is that, I mean, I'm sure there are some parents listening to this, or, you know, like you said, where you kind of, you get along the road in your relationship or marriage and you're just like, okay, we need something to change things up.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, it's you go through that honeymoon period, and then afterwards, it can still be there, but then perhaps suddenly you might want to broaden your horizons, open your world up, overstep your boundaries. And I think that's really curious. I would advise people to do that. Try something different, try something new. But again, as long as it's all consensual.
Right, consensual. And when you say try something new, like, because I know you talk about this, I think in the show and some of the press you've done, Melanie, about just the cost of some of these. I know that the production company, I believe, paid for the work done here for these clients. But if folks are listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I might want to spice up my bedroom or create a sex room, but I don't have a lot of money or resources, like, do you have thoughts for people like that who are listening to this and might want just little tips and tricks of what they can do?
Yes, of course. Um, there is no, if you want to put a little spice in the bedroom, why don't you put in some underbed restraints? Very easy. I put them in Raj and Ryan's, very subtle. Change out your bed linens, put in something a little bit more sumptuous, you know, some Egyptian cottons, you know, put in some throw pillows, something, and some faux fur throws rather. And
Mhm.
then, you know, create your own little box of naughty toys, and keep them all together, but just also make sure you have the correct toy cleaners for those as well. That's what I would do.
So some really simple and cost efficient things that folks can do to kind of to change things up.
Yeah,
Um,
and go out, you know, maybe try couples vibrators, couples toys,
yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, why not? Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of like, let's talk a little about the diversity angle of this too, because as you said, Melanie, like the show is very diverse in every way, and just in terms of ethnicity, in terms of type of relationship. There's an episode with a poly family, which I thought was really, really neat. Could you talk a little about like just expand maybe in some of what you said earlier, just in that diversity and inclusion angle of the show, because I think it's really neat in terms of, you know, meeting folks where they are and respecting and honoring different types of relationships, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think that it's very important. You know, we've got a young couple, Caucasian, then you've got African American couples. Um, Again, you've got to take away that, oh, it's only a type of person that wants a sex room. 9 times out of 10, that will be somebody that is probably in the kink or fetish community. That's where people lean to. You mention sex room, people will just run for the hills because they think it's okay, it's BDSM kink. I'm not into that. But you look at this show and you look at sort of like people like Taylor and AJ, you look at Raj and Ryan, you look at Shanika and Matt, and then you look at Lisa. I mean, everybody is so different. And the reasons for why they want a room like this are also incredibly different. So I'm hoping with that bundle of people and clients that we dealt with, it just makes you go, oh, it's not just this type of person. I'm trying to educate and open people's minds.
Yeah, I think you've done that. I really do. I think it's really important because I think to bring this topic out in the open, just of sex in general, but also just of pleasure and desire and intimacy and being able to talk about it openly, and also just as you said, the diversity of the types of relationships and people is just so important. Like, do you think we're at a turning point in some ways, Melanie, at least in the US, with a show like yours and maybe more dialogue, more openness on sex in general and just the impact it can have?
Darling, I fucking well hope so. You know what? It's time. I mean, you know, it's time to put away that shame. You know, not, you know, or not even judge it. You know, don't judge it. If you haven't tried it, don't fucking judge it. I don't want to hear it. It's, you know, people have, it's interesting. 95% for my show has been very positive. I'm inundated with people um, that love the sex positiveness of this show. And then there's people that like, oh, I don't like this. It's the downfall of Netflix. It's whatever. Fuck off. I don't care. If it's not right for you, don't watch it.
Right.
But, don't watch it and then criticize it, because you only have to watch the first 30 seconds or a minute. You know what you're getting into. It's
Yeah.
those
I mean,
people that are opinionated, that are so opinionated that I'm like, okay, I won't even engage you. Fuck off.
well, I think there's always going to be folks, absolutely, that just don't like, like just are the naysayers that, no matter what you do. But do you think some of that, Melanie, is coming too from like a place of fear or shame? Like, do you seeing some of those comments? Like, you're just like, hey, this shouldn't be on TV. It's gross, et cetera, and so forth.
Actually, that's a really interesting comment that question you brought up there. Some of it can be from fear. I think what we didn't see with Hannah and Wesley, the deputy sheriff, who was just, oh my God, he was so gorgeous.
Oh my God.
They thought their life was quite, not that vanilla. And then yet I put them in a dungeon setting and they are like deer with headlights. And it's like, oh, and then for some reason they shut off completely. And then anything I suggested to them, they laughed, they giggled. And that's a giggle and a laugh of nervousness. And again, a little bit of fear behind it. But as soon as I recognized that, I would move on to something else. And then if I got that same reaction, I move on to something else. And we finally got there, and it was the rope that worked for them.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that they felt kind of maybe pushed them a little bit outside of their comfort, significantly outside of their comfort zone, they were willing to try together. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they realized that, okay, we thought we had a really good life, and we weren't vanilla. We weren't vanilla kink or kinky, but they were like, yeah, we are vanilla. Oh my God, yes. And so yes, I think some of those criticisms can come from fear, and not knowing.
Not knowing and being, yeah, of course, being a bit afraid of the unknown, what we've been told to be, at least to be scared of too.
Yeah, I think, and that's especially in my generation, it was a different world of having been brought up in rather a strict family upbringing, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we talked about earlier, I mean, that can have lifelong impacts for folks. I wanted to dive in a little bit to the different types of relationships piece for a moment too, because I think that's something that we don't see a lot on TV, at least in a positive way, in terms of poly relationships, the throuble dynamic, like all of those things that we don't really talk a lot about as a broader society or see a lot about. What was the impact, do you think, of that episode, and just some of the pieces of showing those different types of relationships? Do you think, like, how has that been received, and why was that important to do?
What, the poly family?
Yeah, having like the poly family and that piece.
Again, for broadness of diversity, I think, and also I thought it was really clever that the producers did this, because again, you say polyamorous family, and we're into BDSM, you've got people fucking running for the hills already because they've heard the word, oh my God, polyamorous, oh my God, kink, BDSM, no. But I designed a dungeon that was very high-end and luxurious.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And it was, like you said, I mean, these were, people could be your neighbor, or, like they're like you said, they're not scary. They're just sort of ordinary folks who.
They were oh my God, they were the sweetest people ever. And just to have it, spend an afternoon with them, being fed and the barbecue, it was lovely. And, they are ordinary people. There's nothing wrong with them.
Absolutely. I just loved it. I wanted to talk before we wrap in a few minutes just around equity, because there's also, I think, some interesting pieces here just around, we talk a lot about equity in Hollywood and more generally in our society, and the notion of equity, of meeting people where they are, like with what their own needs are, right? And I feel like with the section pieces, and you did this in the show, of just what if folks have obviously financial limitations, or they have physical limitations, or they're of a certain age, like in terms of what they can physically do. But can you talk a little about just that notion of equity when it comes to like building a sex room, thinking about this?
Well, equity in the sense of, is it going to be equitable for, building a sex room in your house? Is it going to be, adding further value to the house? Um, Possibly, possibly not. But the thing is, does it matter? It's not going to be like, as we always say as designers, the most important rooms in the house are your kitchens and your bathrooms. Kitchen is the heart of the home. Bathrooms, people like them all set up so they don't have to remodel them. If you've got a sex room in there, does it matter? I mean, do I think it's going to put the price up of the house? Not necessarily, because it's really just another room. So you've got your living room, dining room, kitchen, and you've got your sex room and your bedroom and, your playroom and your living, you can just go on with that. So do I think it's going to put the value up in the house? I don't think so. But I think it's going to create an awful lot of curiosity.
Oh, absolutely. Curiosity. And I think it also does, just again, empower folks to do what they want to do and live their best life, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah. And also, you talked about age back there, which made me absolutely just taking on board what I've been hearing. You're not too old to have fucking sex. Are you kidding me? I love the press reviews. I need to set this straight. If you think 57 years old is a grandma, you're going to have to rethink that one, because people are calling me the old granny. I don't consider myself that, and I don't consider myself looking like that, but it does make me laugh.
Well, yeah. I mean, my mom's 79 and she doesn't consider herself a granny. I mean, I think like, I mean, she jokes about it, I think like that whole piece of it too, when we talk about inclusion and we talk about diversity, around age, and when it comes to sex, like you said, is a real thing, because there is also a lot of diminishment of people who are older, and like, oh yeah, you shouldn't be having sex at a certain age, or you can't, et cetera, and so forth. You should, like, what is that about? Yeah.
Why do people say that? I mean, it almost sounds like, hey, you get to the age of 60 and that's it, you don't have sex after 60. Are you fucking kidding me? You probably have better sex after 50 and better sex after 60.
Right.
You've got that knowledge. You're not inhibited by your body anymore. You're just like, fuck it, I'll just do it. This is my age. This is how it is now. It might, everything might be going in the wrong direction, with gravity, but do I give a fuck? No.
Absolutely not. And just care, exactly. You're much more comfortable with yourself and knowing exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Yep. So what does the future look like? I mean, I know you're working on, personally, I want to hear about that. The novel, I think you mentioned some of the erotica you're working on, but also like, what do you think the future more broadly is, Melanie, in terms of this conversation that I think you started and jumped into around sex, and talking about sex and being open about different experiences with sex? Like, where do you think we're heading, at least in the US, around this topic?
I think that we're certainly opening doors for more conversations about sex. I think it's without it being sort of like taboo or being shamed or judged. And I think it's a conversation that we should have. I am a citizen, and I'm quite comfortable talking about sex. And I understand there are people that aren't, but then you can read about it, or I don't know, create a conversation if you can with your partner. Don't be shy about it. If it's difficult at first, it's difficult, but take small baby steps at a time.
Really, really good advice. And I hope that if we do start doing that as a society, as a culture, that will open up other levels of acceptance and inclusion, right? Because I feel like, I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I feel like this could be a bit of a key to, making the world a little bit more inclusive, more accepting.
I hope so. I really do hope so. I don't want to see us all in our own boxes. I want it to be just out there, acceptance.
I love that. It's a great note to end on. Again, the show is How to Build a Sex Room. our guest today, Melanie Rose. I hope everyone checks it out. It's streaming on Netflix. It's so great, so fun, but also just important. And so I hope you share it with your friends and talk about it. And I can't wait to see what you do next, Melanie. It was a real pleasure having you on.
Oh, it was a real pleasure talking to you, Jared. It was so lovely. I felt we could have talked for a little bit longer over tea or a gin and tonic.
We should do that next time. In fact, we'll do that next time, and we'll do it in person. How about that?
Oh, that'd be lovely. All right, my darling, look after yourself and have a fabulous day. And thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.